Good afternoon, everyone. We're a little bit late, just we had some technical issues with the internet. Technology.
Yes.
But that's all right. We've fixed it. So I am here live at Advanced Wellness Chiropractic, which is my clinic, and I am here with Karla Loeppky, and she is a personal trainer with Your Body, Your Way, which is located out in Beaumont, Alberta. And Karla, as I mentioned, is a personal trainer with over 8 years experience. So I've introduced this concept called Wellness Wheel Wednesdays because as a chiropractor with over 15 years experience, I've discovered, people come generally to a chiropractor because they have some sort of ache or pain. And that's a great reason to choose to use chiropractic, because we are certainly qualified to help manage some of those aches and pains. So when I do a thorough history and I'm discussing with the person what is going on with their low back, their neck, or their headaches and how it presents itself, what I've often find is that people will hunt to the end of the earth to find out what they've done physically to themselves. They wonder if they bent wrong, and maybe they did, if they sat too long, or my favorite and the most common and most popular is that they slept wrong. And we all know how to sleep, but maybe the neck was kinked in certain places, but it might have just been the final event that pushed everything over the edge, and now we have all these signs and symptoms. So it's not always the case that all aches and pains are a result of physical attributes. So it's not something that we physically have done to ourselves to make us hurt so much. And that becomes apparent if the pain is particularly recurrent, or if it is of a real chronic nature. That tells me that there's something a little bit more underneath the broader picture, and it's not always something physical that we're doing. So there's two other vectors that often aren't as regularly explored, and those are chemical, which means the pollution in our environment. So the environmental air, our water quality, our soil quality, that begins to make sense. If we, drink polluted water, we're going to feel it. That's a little stressful. And smoking, drinking, drugs, this obviously creates a bit more stress for the system. So the body begins to work in a hierarchy. It's more important for us to kind of clean our lungs and keep our heart working than it is to fix some back pain. And diet. So certain foods can actually really create a state of inflammation or decrease the state of inflammation. So food certainly can contribute to the presentation of pain. But my favorite category is emotions, because these are big deals. But emotions are the sads, the hurts, the angers, the frustrations, the shames, the guilts, the rages, and they can be small, but they can also be really big. And the emotions can actually come from different spheres. So they can come from how we feel about our connection to a higher source, be it God or universe or however you wish to speak to it. About our mental capacity, are we growing, learning things? Our social well-being, are we maintaining our connections? Do we enjoy our job? That's a big one for a lot of people. We're in employment that we don't like. Our financial health, and our family health. Are we in a pending divorce? Our relationships with aging parents and our children. But today what we're talking about is the emotional pain that comes from the physical realm. And this is pain, the emotions that come around from failing health. That's a big deal. So if we're in a position where our health is threatened, that certainly creates a lot of fear. It creates anger and frustration. Maybe some shame and guilt as to why we didn't pay attention to this a little sooner. There's a whole variety of strong emotions that come when our physical health is challenged. But also, in particular in this vector, is beauty. So how we feel about our self-image. So women in particular tend to worry about how we look on our appearance, whereas men tend to worry a little bit more about their physicality, their brawn, and their strength and bravado and all that kind of stuff. So Karla here is going to address some of that emotional pain that comes from failing health, from a self-image that we have in our mind, and maybe the reality of where we are isn't a portrayal of that, and a lack of physical strength. So Karla, in your studio where you work, is this something, when somebody calls you, How does that actually work? Is that one of the most frequent things? I'm assuming that when people look for a personal trainer, there's at least some level of frustration. They finally had it. That's it. So is this actually what happens when they first contact you?
Yes, absolutely. Contacting us or walking in, it can be very stressful for a person. Making that first initial step is vulnerability, first and foremost. So that emotion is a big one. And then when they're talking to you, they usually have that fear or that anger that they've let it get so long. So sometimes there's hesitation when they first walk in, the anger, the frustration, the resentment, or the embarrassment. Yeah. Right. So it's gaining that relationship. And then sometimes there's excitement because they come in, they've made that decision, and they want to be there. So first it's understanding where that person is at, and then meeting them that way. The first part to it is that initial consultation. And I say to anybody, fitness is your journey, so it's got to work for you. We do offer the free consultations because I want them to come in, make sure that our studio feels comfortable for them, make sure that I feel comfortable to them, as well as I represent my staff. Right. So making sure that they feel comfortable, and then we get to know them a little more.
That's great. So when they do an initial consultation, how long does that usually last, and what can a person expect when they call and book an appointment with you?
So we always chat on the phone first and a little bit just to find out what it is that people are looking for and making sure that we can actually help them out with that. The consultation's anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. It really depends on how long you talk, but we always book at least an hour for sure. And then we go through a little bit more questions in depth, and it does come down to the questions on, how do you sleep? How do you eat? How do you feel about those things? What have you tried before? What's worked and what hasn't worked, and where your emotional status is.
That sounds really good. So let's say I do have a lot of shame or guilt about and I'm almost embarrassed to come to the gym. So I know that I need to be working out. I know that I need to be eating better. But let's say I can't actually make myself, or there's a lot of fear about working out with people. Do you have some solutions for people that are embarrassed about being seen? That's so embarrassed that they're just afraid to even go to the gym.
Yes, yeah, and that's, that was also where I opened up a private studio. So we are 1,000 square foot private personal training studio, so that everybody is there in the same realm. Everybody is looking to work with a personal trainer. Everyone's working with a personal trainer, so we're all in the same keel, right? Yeah. And then no one's standing around and watching. Yeah. So you don't become a spectator for somebody else. But the other thing is, every single month we sit down and we chat with our clients on the successes that we've had and where we've come to things. We call it goal setting or check-in or assessments, but it's sitting down and looking at the fact of, our emotional health plays a factor, our nutritional health plays a factor. Life happens sometimes, and you're going to go out for wings with work, right? It's Wing Wednesday. That's how do I deal with those things? And so we sit with our clients every month to help them come up with tactics, and how do we deal with them, and what's allowable, and how do we work them into our days, because we have to remember to be human as well too. That's
that sounds really good. And it's true. People do slip up, and they have little, but it's actually how we deal with some of those mistakes. I know that a common paradigm for me is that I tend to over worry about little mistakes. But so if somebody does have a slip, is there an accountability for it, and do you create some strategies for making sure that future slips happen less frequently, or how do you manage that?
Well, it's understanding that slips are going to happen is first and foremost. So it's being human, and that's okay. And then it's talking about what the slip was. So, let's say, for example, it was food in this instant, and they couldn't stop eating that bag of chips, and they ate the whole bag of chips. The first thing is telling them that it has nothing to do with the chips, right? The chips are not the problem, because we always want to blame something or something. So it was the chips' fault somehow. I don't know how the chips got involved in this, but they got involved. So it's the chips' fault, right? It's not the chips' fault. It was a situation that either happened that day or that week. Maybe they had a bad day at the office, had a fight with their spouse or their loved one or their children. And so that emotional connection, and food does fill that. It gives us those wonderful hormones, feeling good, and utopia type stuff. So we reach for those chips unknowingly, and then before we know it, the whole bag is gone. So we work with our clients on what was the situation and trying to get down to the fact that there was a situation and it actually wasn't the chips.
Correct. That is true. It's not that you can't eat the chips. You know, we don't eat chips every day all the time. So it's not a question of you couldn't stop, because you can. We can always stop eating. It's the more important question is to discover why we're eating that, and that addressing that emotional pain. So it's good that there is this frequent accountability. So what happens if you notice somebody, you're working with a client, and all of a sudden they're on their journey, working, but maybe, and then they stop progressing. So, and there's some feelings of frustration that they've hit the plateau. It happens all the time, whether it's in a chiropractic treatment plan or something. There's always a little bit of plateau. So how do you encourage somebody to kind of persevere and help them get to that next evolutionary step in their vision of themselves that they see themselves as?
Yeah, so it's dissecting what the plateau came from as well too, because it can be nutritionally and it can be physically, but having a goal first and foremost is always important. So, you know, we have lots of people, again, every week or every month when we do that check-in assessment, there's also physical goals around that. So we'll check people's push-ups, planks, and squats, and we try to get to a certain goal or better the form. Maybe they start on the wall, right? So a push-up doesn't always have to be on the knees on your floor, and that's what people get fearful about as well too, is that everything is tailored to everyone's needs and desires at that moment. So you might have started with push-ups on the wall, and then you've worked your way down, and now you're on the floor with your knees, and so you're kind of getting that goal. Sometimes we need that extra push, and that's what the plateau happens, is we get comfortable.
Right.
Or emotional. And so we need that push. If it's food related, what we actually run into at the studio is people not eating enough. There's this myth around, and a lot of the fad diets right now, where you restrict your calories, and that's what's going to give you those quick wins and gains. And I'm not going to lie that they don't give you those quick wins, but they leave you with bad results at the end of the day when you stop. So it's actually getting people to understand what you must consume in order to keep moving daily.
Correct. In my clinic, I follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So it's, and I encourage my patients to follow that. And basically the rudiments of an anti-inflammatory diet, lots of vegetables, a lean protein, and drizzles that with some monounsaturated fat. And yeah, calorie restriction isn't ideal, and eating enough in order to sustain yourself, but eating it's more the hormonal balance and how it affects the hormones of your body, which really can cause you to access excess fat as a source of energy as opposed to just carbohydrates that we ate. So that is pretty key. I didn't realize that under eating is a problem as opposed to overeating. That's interesting that you find that in your industry. So just to go back to one of the points that you made in that, I feel that it's important to celebrate the wins, especially if it's what I encounter in the clinic as well. They begin to feel better, but it's they almost forget how bad they were, but they're not 100%, and they forgot that journey. So celebrating those wins. So how do you highlight all those wins for your patient? Patients, for sure.
Patients or clients are the same thing. Yeah.
For your clients, how do you?
I call them humans.
Great. How do you celebrate that with them and really give them gold stars? Great job that you accomplished.
So when we sit down with them, again, it comes down to this check-in and being accountable. Without a monthly check-in, things pass by and people forget. Yeah. So with the trainers, we write it down in their files as well. So we pull out the file, and let's say you trained last week with me and you happen to just mention in passing when you came in, like, oh, hey, I put on these pants, I feel great. And I make a note of that actually in Vera's file. So when we sit down at the end of the month, I ask you, so what are your quick wins? Because you're always going to tell me what you didn't get done this month or what you didn't lose. Yeah. And then I'll say, well, do you remember when you came in this day? And you're like, oh, yeah. And then it kind of gets you, oh, and I also did this and I did this. And it is helpful to highlight those things that come up.
That is an important point. It looks like you're highlighting the feeling good aspect. So sometimes if we're getting so bogged down with these strong emotions of negativity, of shame, guilt, embarrassment, it's nice to have that break from those strong emotions by somebody else observing some of those wins that we actually have. And then it's no longer work to work so much towards feeling that good. It slowly becomes an is. But it's a slow transition, and I think that's what needs to be highlighted. So in my practice as a chiropractor, it's I've had on occasion where people come in with an extreme amount of pain and they leave with barely any pain, but that is more an atypical presentation or a typical how people generally progress in a treatment plan. It's that can happen, but it's not. It doesn't happen as often as you might think, a type of thing. So sometimes people have trouble, or I think of it as a huge chasm. They're over here and they want to be over there, and they sometimes people have trouble understanding the time that it's going to take to get there, and they have trouble to understand that why can't you just fix it now? And it's in my mind, it's not sustainable. And how do you feel about that when people want to be there right now, but they're over here? And how do you help them bridge that chasm so that they can get to the other side?
And it's unfortunate because it's a lot to do with the world that we live in, as we have access to everything now, and that instant results. It is getting them to understand that, yesterday they weren't, that man wasn't super strong with his six-pack abs, and that woman didn't look in a mirror and take a picture of herself and love everything about herself, and then they woke up in the morning and, whoa, who's that in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't happen, right? It took time for you to get where you're at the point where you feel unhappy, or you're feeling uncomfortable, or you're in pain with moving your body as well, too. So it's going to take that time to get out of there. A lot of times we try to not fixate on the outcome of the goal. So people come in with that, I want to lose 20 pounds, because it is, or they want the muscles, or they want the abs. And that is the ultimate idea of what they want. But we try to figure out what are the behaviors around that, and what does that feel like as well, too.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, how do we work on the behaviors that are going to get us to that goal?
Ooh, a nice feeling aspect. Yeah, because I think that's what ultimately attracts all those positive results, is beginning to feel like that individual, as opposed to just wishing it so. So in my line of practice, often when I look at somebody and they have a condition and it's been around for 20 years, I do try and highlight that it is going to take a little bit of time, somewhere anywhere between 3 to 6 months, sometimes 9, and up to 1.5 years in some cases, depending on the external stresses that they have. So if somebody, do you ever have to communicate that it's going to take a year for us to get to the 50-pound loss mark? And how do you deal with the I'm sure there's strong emotions that there must be sad, hurt, frustrated that it's going to take this amount of time to get there. So how do you hold their hand through that?
With our studio, we've actually changed the way that personal training is done. So a lot of big box gyms that you go to, you're going to buy 10 sessions, 17 sessions, 20 sessions, and it's like, okay, well, how do I plan that? I come once today, I come twice next week, I don't really know. With our studio, we plan it as 4 months, 8 months, 12 months. So that's the initial commitment, and then 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 4 days a week, whatever works best with your lifestyle as well as with your budget. And then again, the goal. So getting to know that client, we work through it first, and then I always give a recommendation, and I let them know, I understand where you're at right now, but with this goal, it's going to take you 8 months to a year to get there, or it might take you 4 months. It depends. It does depend on the commitment level of the person and the ideal goal as well, too. Yeah. So I'm honest at the very beginning of how long it's going to take and how many days a week it's going to take. So then we present that to them and what that looks like. And then again, after that, the design of the program is monthly check-ins that they have to be accountable for, support at home, nutritional support that they get on top of that, and lifestyle habits. We also, you talked about people don't exactly love working out. We also make it fun at our studio. Ooh. So I'm kind of the funny one, but I dance around. Like, I dance around silly. I make up words to new songs as they're working out, because it keeps them distracted while they're working out, and it gives them something to be entertained about. So making
really
it fun
and cute. Yeah. I sometimes sing to my patients as well, but I'm glad I have a day job. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, it does sound like if somebody were to call your clinic, call your studio and book an appointment, it sounds like they'd be well supported, because these strong emotions around the physical really can be detrimental. I mean, if they're not addressed and they stuff even further, it just can perpetuate that chronic pain that you're feeling, and it might not be the physical thing that's causing the pain, is the emotion surrounding how we actually feel about ourselves. So if this resonates with you, then it might be wise to give Karla and her studio a call so that she can help you on your journey to healing some of that emotional pain, feeling better about yourself and your body, and regaining some physical health. And chiropractic is certainly one of those tools. It's not everybody looks to a chiropractor in order to solve some of their aches and pains, or that, hey, maybe a chiropractor can help me with some of my emotions, but it really helps transition that. It really can help make that difference. So using the two can often act as a catalyst and push people further ahead, faster to that end goal if the two are working together. So for all our viewers that are listening live, I do have a call to action at the end of these videos. And my call to action is if you're interested in exploring how chiropractic can actually help you get over some of those, have some freedom from the aches and pains and get over it finally, I can offer the initial visit as a complimentary. That's a value of $80. So if you private message us, we'd be certainly reaching out to you, and we can arrange a time and a date that actually works well with your schedule. But I do encourage people to like this page, like Karla's page, and comment, share your experiences with chiropractic, personal training, be it specifically with Karla or myself, or just some positive experience that you had with either of these two fields. We'd really love the comments and to interact with you and figure out how changing your lifestyle has really improved your overall health image. Karla, do you have something for our viewers?
Well, like I said, all of our initial consultations are free because it's important to get to know each other, and it's important to make the step for yourself. Outside of that, we can provide people a session in the studio where they can try out our group sessions or private, complimentary, because sometimes it's that fear of not knowing what it's going to look like or how the program. And then outside of that, if people can't come to Beaumont, because Beaumont is on the south side of the city, we can support you other ways, and we can always chat about how those ways are.
I thought of a great thing for, in case you're worried about the drive, and I would use that time as, listening to some inspirational things, because I think we both work with Stacey, so listening to those videos would be, something inspirational. So to use that time maybe to work on the vision and get to that feeling point. So don't let distance be an issue for you. You can use that driving time as a way to really work on the goal and achieve what you want to achieve in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so comment, share, like, and stay tuned for next week. We're having Victoria Armstrong. She is with Master Cleaners. She's based out of Fort Saskatchewan, but she picks up your dry cleaning and drops it off for you. But she's going to talk a little bit more about the subtle chemical stresses in life from some of the cleaning products, particularly with the detergents and the laundry soaps and all that stuff that we use. So stay tuned next week. Victoria Armstrong with Master Cleaners.